I know on all the other videos that we've done, my voice has normally got those wonderful Cambridge dulcet tones, but I've had an operation. Crest 35, we're up in Leek in Staffordshire. Later on today, we're going to be travelling down to Wales, and then from there we'll travel down to Cirencester. We've got 3 churches to capture down there, into Glastonbury, onto Tintagel. So we've got a bit of a journey ahead of us. But today we're actually in St Edward's the Confessor's Church in Leek. It was restored in 1839 AD. We know that for a fact. But it's built, it was originally a Norman church. Now you can still see some telltale signs as I go around the church and show you. Hopefully you're hearing me okay. I'm just looking at my learned friend, she's nodding, so I assume that's correct. Okay, good. So, one thing that's really nice about this church, it's obviously had it, like most churches, it's had extension upon extension over the periods of time. But as I say, we can't forget that fatal time in the sort of mid-1800s, where we had the fire here and it burnt down to the ground, really. So, quite nice and fun. So you've got to realise that a lot of these things are, although they're fairly antiquated, they are pretty much, obviously, begged, borrowed and stolen from other places, most of it, but all come together quite nicely. Excellent. I just love this in the marble effects. Quite nice. Obviously, again, that would have been entered in after, post 1839, really, to be fair. But look at this window, isn't that glorious? Obviously, the restorations occurred, so what you see today is what would have been here prior. And what I love about it is all the vibrant colours that are in there, almost like a tree of life in the aspect of. If we follow round here, so my great-grandfather, Lord Robert De Neville, was associated with this church, so that's quite interesting to know. Now, Lord Robert, as we well know, was born in 1240 AD, so he obviously was involved in the original church prior to the burnings down. Kiru, isn't this amazing? I love the way people have a different take on the Kiru. Some people say Chiru, but it's not. The correct pronunciation will always be Kiru. Kiru. So again, it's just anglicised, I guess, in many respects. So as we come around here, there's a wonderful piece I want to show you around here, which isn't that amazing? Now, yes, it's fairly modern by nature, really, but isn't that amazing? It's probably one of the only artistry works I've seen with 2 male figures in it. You could be mistaken that's a female there, but it's not. That's actually supposed to be the younger Jesus there, and he's obviously shadowing one of his disciples, as it were. But what's interesting is they've got him collated. Now, this is quite an interesting point and poignant fact to make, is that the actual the actual piece of the artwork there is done more like a Neolithic period, not in a period which is often professed, like the year dot, i.e. then going into Adestomne, i.e. the AD version. So it looks much older than what it is if you look at the pictures. It's a little bit different in the sense, but very unusual to see that. I quite enjoy the fact that they've stuffed it down the back here of the church. It's not really on a prominent display anywhere, which is quite good. Got the shield over here. Quite nice little touch there, memorial to one of the Chandler family. So, which is quite nice. Again, restored after the fires, really, to be fair. So, and as we come around here, there's something that's of great interest to me, and most importantly from the Sinclair side of my family. You've got one of the aspects of the Sinclair Clan here, bold as brass, which I'm quite impressed about. Saw it when we first came in, knew it was here anyway. You've got the Fisher King there, obviously the shells represent the Fisher King. You've got part of the Sinclair Clan here, but if you notice, there's no inscriptions around to say why it's there. Now, you could say, well, that's because when they had the fire, it got damaged and destroyed, but hardly likely. We can see that this is fire damaged when it did burn down, but that survived. So if that survived, the other parts of it would have survived had they have been there in the first place. So that's quite interesting to note. So you've got a Sinclair level here as well, which ties us into Roslin Chapel in Scotland, which is quite interesting. So usual, which most churches have, especially in England, churches of England, things, you know, the old royal family crest, pretty straightforward in most churches, really. I think someone, with due respect It's nice with the roses, a little touch of roses on there. I quite like the buttercups actually as well. That's quite an unusual thing. I don't normally see buttercups on them. So you can tell it's a fairly modern piece of work in the sense of a couple of 100 years circa, but still nice nevertheless. I'm so sorry about my voice, guys. If you can hear this, it's it's as bad for me as it is for you. But yeah, so but we endeavour to try and please as much as possible. Again, nice piece of artwork there. What I quite like about it is that you've got the angel wings in a red colour, which is quite nice. Now you could argue the fact that that's because it's from a Celtic origin, and you've got the griffin there. I can see the griffin there with the red wings, but all the wings are red apart from a few blues. There's a few blues there, but again, I don't normally see angels represented with red wings, so that's an interesting fact as well to see. I love all this. This part here in particular, sorry Janice, I should lead you as where I'm going. This particular part here, behold, a virgin shall conceive and beam a son and shall call his name Manuel. Yeah. So we got the play on the virgin aspect. It depends on which school of thought and which doctrine you're believing in, really, or doctrine you're believing in these days, I guess. So that's quite good. We're coming to a rather interesting piece down here. So we've just seen down that end of the church, the far end there, we've just seen the Sinclair shield from the Sinclair Clan. Now, what's really interesting, up in the high altar there, nicely squirreled away, out of sight, we have a Knights Templar symbol, which is quite interesting. So Sinclair's, Knights Templar, pretty much go hand in hand. So as we come up here, we shall see, thus and it shall be given and all that. When my learned friend, because I've got a remote microphone now, I think I can speed off into the Warbler yonder. It takes my learned friend a little while to catch up. However, we have the Virgin Mary, purported Virgin Mary there. We've got the aspect there in modern and old version. But what we also have right at the top there is the Lamb of God, which I think is quite an interesting one. Slightly different take on some of the variations that I've seen, because if you look very carefully, if you look really carefully, yes, you see the Lamb of God, but you also see a baby lamb jumping on the back of its mother. Can you see that? So the flag is actually a child or a baby lamb, basically. But we see the Templar cross there, the Maltese cross is very evident there. We've got the 5 sections of, as we know, of the elements, earth, air, fire, water, spirit. They're quite clearly defined there, but nicely squirreled away in the upper high altar. So yeah, I think there's definitely a correlation between the two. Just here, we've got a wonderful piece here. Again, as my learned friend said, it almost looks like it's a Voodoo aspect. And I suppose in certain respects it could be perceived in that way, but that's only a perception. Because what we actually have here, as we can see if we look very closely, we've got the fleur-de-lis and the quadrants, yeah, and obviously the cross, the lateral points. So we've got the Samnor or Moor in the language, Samnor Moor, which means, as we know, the circle of 8, yeah, Samnor Moor. So we have the fleur-de-lis, as we know, which, as we know, is prominent in Sinclair household, in Knights Templar, in Masonic movement, and of course in the Church of England. Nice little part of the high altar here. I think for fear of falling, we'll probably just step down from away from this part, as it were. Is my voice still coming out okay, albeit croaky? Ah, brilliant, great. So, I mean, it's an amazing church, and you wouldn't believe it's so quiet in here because, well, I'm talking, but it's so quiet in here because you've got a busy road out there in this current day and frame, really. This reminded me almost of like the trident sign. You can see this here. Again, I quite like it in the red and the golds. So, as we know, we've got the colour of red, we've got the colour of blues, blue, white, red, blah, 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 blacks. We've even seen a little bit of purple, I guess, purple of the craft. So, there we are. Just coming along here to show you one more little piece. So, just give you a little pan round at the end, I think, to be fair on this one. So, I say St Edward the Confessor's Church, Leek, Staffordshire, borders, Robert De Neville, 1240 AD, my 20th great-grandfather. Obviously, he was born at Ragley Castle, so there we are. Outside the church, just to let you know that little piece before I forget, there's a slight old part of the wall before the ruins, obviously earmarked 1644 circa. It's quite nice as well. If you ever get a chance to go round to where the main tower is, around the corner and the side, you'll also see right up, if you don't mind, don't obviously be careful, don't fall over, but if you look right up to the top there, you can see some very, very interesting representations of gargoyles. And there's a very interesting representation of the Green Man, which I haven't seen. The last time I saw that was at St. Materiana's Church in, down in Tintagel. So, quite interesting as well. So there we are, guys. Hope it's been informative, and if you get a chance, obviously, join us on the other videos.